Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome and thank you for joining. My name is Amanda Meyer, and I'm the Marketing Coordinator here at Estimating Edge. Today, Mouw, who is our Training and Support Manager, will be covering the Standing Seam module. Before we get started, we have a couple housekeeping items. All lines have been muted, and we'll answer your questions after the webinar. To ask a question, enter them into the question window. Mike, next slide, please.
Okay.
Thank you. I will also be sending out an email with the recorded link, and the recording will also be available on demand on our website. When you leave the webinar today, there will be a pop-up window with a 3-question survey. We'd love to hear your feedback. And don't forget to sign up for next month's webinar, which is on common conditions on March 18th. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Mike, let's get started.
Well, great. Thank you, Amanda, and welcome to the Estimating Edges series of webinars. Today's webinar will be about the Standing Seam module. I'll be looking at the features, adjustments, drawing techniques, panel layout report with cut list, and the various costing options. Let's begin. As you can see, I'm in the middle of my standing seam project. I've got a standing seam condition in front of me, and it suggests perfect cut line waist. The cut line waist of the module is one of the biggest assets that it has. I'm going to go into the property here and just talk about it a second. I'm going to, in a moment, explain all the various adjustments here. But the panel width, and as that panel width lays into a hip or a valley, creates a cut line waist situation. That panel is squared off and it needs to be trimmed, and thus you lose square footage of panel. So the edge tracks that automatically no matter the panel size. And it squares that off, and it accepts that as added waste to the total square footage of the panel. So there's really no need for any extravagant waste percentage or a guess at the end of the project, because this takes care of all of that excess cut line waste. So let's look now at let's go take a peek at what do I mean by cut line waist? Here you can see a valley cut into another roof, and along that valley you can see where we measured in a diagonal, but the panel itself really would be squared off and then cut, and you've got to acknowledge that cut line waist. Also, at the end of a gable or rake, you might wind up with just a partial panel. Well, that had to be cut out of a full panel, and you can see where the edge is actually going to pick that panel up as well to complete the cut line waist. So back into the condition property, we're going to just walk through these real quick. Under manufacturer, we've got a number of manufacturers and their names to go with the different panel systems. The panel width is a variable. It could vary from 12 inches to 48 inches depending, and that will be the topical square footage of your roof. For those that are considering coils and need a stretch out of panel to make the panel, you put your stretch out in here, and you'll see that calculation a little bit later on as well. One of the first adjustments is this add length. Well, add length is going to add so many inches to every panel on your project. So it would, you might consider this as your budgetary or a waste reality, but it is all-encompassing and across every panel that we have. So if you're not looking to bump up every panel, we have other adjustments here that we're going to talk about. The panel type, we have a number of different panel types in there. If the one you're looking at is not there, you can simply add it in there. Whether or not you need battens to work with your standing seam, you can use or not use battens here if you want. Roof height. Well, roof height is a simple variable. It works against your labor the taller you go, safety reasons. So you put in the roof height. This can display further on into your labor, and actually your labor can look at that and self-adjust when your building gets higher than normal. Ridge cutback. Ridge cutback is when you apply your ridge panel up into that ridge, and you don't normally take it to the very extent of your ridge. It's usually cut back 2 or 3 inches to allow for a vent or something, and where your ridge cap would cover that. But so if we throw 2 inches of ridge cutback, that will deduct 2 inches from those ridge panels. Your eave hem is an add for hemming or folding at the eave. We could add an inch in there, and that will tackle any panel hitting an eave. Another nice adjustment. The hip valley extra. Well, there's you may have that similar folding into your hip and valley. So this is going to add another inch to every panel that hits that diagonal, that hip or valley. Panel length increment. This is a place where we consolidate the various lengths. So imagine you've got your roof, a number of hips and valleys, a number of different ridge, eave measurements. Well, you're going to have a lot of variables. If this was all based upon 1 inch of panel length, well, every different panel length would have a designation. You could wind up with 50 or 100 different panel lengths. If I increase this panel length increment, it's going to group similar length panels together. For instance, a 10-foot 1-inch panel and a 10-foot 3-inch panel will get combined in the same bucket under the 10-foot 3-inch realm, and so on. Now, you might consider this a neat place for budgetary reasons. Maybe you want to just go to 1-foot increments. That locks down all your panels and actually moves them in upward to that nearest 1-foot increment, and you wind up with a lot less variances of panel lengths, and I call it a budgetary because it's going to be slightly inflated. This increment inflates the total square footage of your total panel for your roof. So budgetary could start at 12. You can back this down to 6 when you get a little bit more serious, and you can decide if you want to be just dead on and see what every panel on the job takes, or you could leave that at 3 and you'll get some consolidation of panel length. Minimum panel length. Well, when your panels come down your hip and valleys toward that edge, they get smaller and smaller, and you will wind up with a number of 6-inch, 10-inch, 15-inch panel lengths that you would never necessarily order or want to be in your cut list. So by putting a larger number here, all those small panels blow up to at least a 5-foot panel, and you're not running around looking for pieces on the ground. You have enough 5-footers or whatever you put there to handle all those very small panels. Clip information, you can go pick your different clip possibilities if you need a clip. If you don't need a clip, then we'll just end up using the fasteners on some kind of clip centers. The clip centers do roll down each seam, and so that adjustment gets you more or less clips and the corresponding fasteners per clip down below. Fastener length follows the same edge mindset that you've seen before in all the other edge roof conditions. This extra clips per panel I like a lot. It allows you to take care of some wind upload realities. If I want a couple extra clips per panel around my perimeter, that's what's going to happen, and I'm able to kind of keep that roof on. So in general, there's a host of adjustments kind of to fit the different systems, to fit your styles, to fit, your wind region, what have you. So let's go now tackle the drawing screen and see what options we have in the drawing screen, what methods we could adopt. So here's a sloped roof, and the first method I'd like to suggest is to find a common point between as many different planes as possible. This particular point right here is a point that affects 3 different planes. So starting at this common point, all 3 of these planes, as far as the aesthetics of the standing seam, as far as the seams lining up, will line up very nicely, okay? Another one could be this one where you have 3 different planes consolidating, and or this one could be a starting point. And it's just going to help us get a cleaner visual, a cleaner display of our standing seam. So I'm going to start at this point, and I'm going to run up this ridge. And a couple other tools we want to have incorporated is this ortho tool, keeping our lines nice and vertical and horizontal in 45, and also the snap to points is highly used with this module. So we're going to tackle this first plane, and the next thing I want to bring into mind is this eave-ridge relationship. You want those to be parallel lines. With parallel lines, it means your panels are going to be of the same length because they are equal distant to your eave. So we want that we let ortho be our friend with that, and we're going to let that help us keep those lines very parallel. And that 45-degree ortho is also going to work out very well. So upon completing that, I'm going to hit enter, and my first plane is done. Now I'm going to show you a nice feature with our Edge version 12, and we've got a mirror horizontal. I don't get a chance to use that much, but in this particular case, this really works out nice. Clicking mirror horizontal flipped my roof over, and it created another area on the other side. So just a fine place to use that. You might find that in some of your sloped roofing. Okay, so with 2 planes drawn, I'm going to jump right on over into drawing our high-lows and seeing where those seams are, seeing where the panels are lying. So I've moved into the high-low. This area is been selected. It was the last area I drew. You can see the corners on there. And I'm going to draw a high-low arrow, and it drew my panels in. I'm going to select the other side and do another high-low. And you can see it just did the reverse. And I've got a kind of a very clean gable type of roof going. So I'm going to continue drawing just to walk through some of the points. So I want to start again at this common point. Starting there is going to help me lock this all in together to the best of our abilities. And I'm just following the points that I see. I hit enter. I'm going to run right over to my high-low and give it a high-low. I could wait, but I want to see how I'm doing. And as that fills in, boy, you can see I'm right on the mark here. Things are looking well. So back to drawing. So another dynamic. Remember that first point is a seam point, okay? And if I look in this area of my drawing, I'm not quite sure how my end seam worked. So I'm going to come and I'm going to start right on a seam that I see visually and work my way back across. And hit enter and go give it my high-low. And you can see how those have lined up very well. So I'm going to continue on around. I'm going to take what looks like a very nice common point. This is hit this ridge very well. I'm going to come in here and begin to walk my way around. Work my way up that diagonal. And go give it a high-low. Very nice. I'm going to jump to the other side. And again, start at this common point. Using my snap to points very well. Work up my ridge or my hip, hit enter, go give it a high-low. And again, I could wait to the end, but I want to see how well I'm doing. And boy, things are just doing really fine. I've got a fine-looking roof here. So lastly, another standing seam tool is, and not used with too many other conditions, is this hip locator. Okay, so by clicking the hip locator, it's going to help me find a center panel and exactly how do I draw this so that my seams line up well. So the hip locator is based upon hitting your two base points and then coming up your hip, and it actually puts these annotations in here. If I'll zoom in, so you can see they're really nice. So when I come back to drawing my area panel, I'm going to start on the one point, which is the edge of a seam. I'm going to go to the center, and I'm going to begin to work my way around. And let's go give that a high-low. And you can see how that has factored in very nicely. So the hip locator is all about finding a good points that create that center panel with the seams going up, not quite on that pinnacle. All right. So now that I've taken off this roof, let's go look at what the panel layout report and cut list is going to look like. I'm going to minimize this and minimize this, and let's go minimize that as well. So here is that roof, and you can see that this report creates, it labels every panel. You can see a number of L's for these panels on this side, You can see a number of H's over here at the lower left with cascading labels through the rest of your takeoff. They're corresponding to your cut list over here on the very far left of H panels of 16 feet. I've got 34 of those. I can see I have a number of L panels, 46 of those at 12 feet, and so on. Remember that, let me pull this back up again. We had talked about the minimum panel length. Okay, so the minimum panel length ends up being this S panel. You see how we have a number of panels, they're calling them all S. Well, those are going to be in that 5-foot realm, and I'm going to order so many of those. I've got 26 of those at this moment. Okay, so let's go in and now move to what is the output that we get here. We're going to go to the pricing screen and see the different costing options there are. So here we see 3 different ways the panel material comes through. We have the square foot of panel, and in this case it's 4,100 square feet. Remember, that includes your cut line waste. We have a square foot of panel with the stretch out, so that's that 22 inches, and you can see that that square footage is a bit more, another 1,000 feet of that 22-inch value. We also have a lineal foot option for your T-panels, and this works well into a coil mindset if you wanted to buy coils of this metal. Other options are over here in the labor screen. Let's go look at that real quick. So there is a standard install T-panel by the square foot. That's that square foot of the normal panel. But I like this one as well. Many of our sheet metal and standing seam installers like this panel by the count. Here we have 218 panels on this job, and they're telling me I can do 3 panels an hour per person, or 72 panels for a crew of 3 to put our panels in. So the Edge gives you all of that by default. So to recap, the standing seam module with all its adjustments will give you really what you want. A tight number with perfect waist, a slightly inflated number if you're working on a budgetary mindset, really with just a couple double clicks. And once your field measurements are taken, you can line them up with your cut list and begin to adjust your properties to even get it more finely tuned with a possible field measurement. So that wraps up today's webinar on the standing seam. Nice, a lot of great options. I want to thank you all for joining me.